What's up, everybody? Welcome on into the sweat here on a Friday, taking you into the weekend. We appreciate you joining us, coming to you from home. I am AdamMKaufman, and from other people's homes, we also have Paul Bruno from RotoWire and DK contributor Gary and Thorne. We're going to bounce all the way around this show, guys. We're going to, of course, do baseball. We'll do NHL Free Agency. It's been incredibly active. Can Cam Smith hold on to his lead at the Open Championship? NASCAR, so much more. But we begin on the diamond with you two experts, and we're going to start in the world of daily fantasy. Paul, we're going to start with you, my friend. We need the best DFS option on the mound tonight. Looking at this, I mean, you got some studs. You got Clayton Kershaw. You got Alek Manoah. Who do you like best?
Well, I'm so happy to have options. Normally, when I come on this show, it's a bunch of stiffs that I've never heard of. I got to do a lot of homework. But, you got Kershaw, you got Darvish, you got Robbie Ray. I'm going to go close to home, though, and say Alek Manoah versus Zach Greinke and half of the Royals squad that made it over the border owing to the COVID vaccine regulations. They should be easy meat for the Blue Jays, but they certainly weren't last night. I think the tables will turn tonight, though, and Manoah will have a big role in it. He will have a big-time opportunity to get a W here tonight. He has 9 quality starts in his last 11 outings, pitched to a 2.34 ERA on the season, and he should have no issues slicing through this weak Kansas City lineup tonight.
Music to your ears, I imagine, Gary. And what direction are you going in?
Yeah, I do like that tier. I think Manoah at 9K, as Paul was mentioning, against a Royals team that is exceedingly young. I think that's really important too, is you got a lot of these guys coming up from AA, from AAA. And as we've seen time and time again, especially early on in their tenures at the major league level, those strikeout rates from the minor leagues really jump when they reach the major league level. So I think Manoah, who, if there has been a single knock on him as a DFS asset this season, it's been his lack of strikeout upside. I think that's sort of rectified tonight against Kansas City. And then you've got, even like Yu Darvish at 8,900 right beneath him, a guy who has been fantastic this season. That might even be underselling it. He's been almost unhittable this season when pitching in San Diego. He's got a ERA below 2. He's got a 2.69 FIP at Petco Park in his 8 starts. Only Tony Gonsolin has allowed a lower opponent WOBA in his home outings than Yu Darvish this season. So going up against a pretty underwhelming Diamondbacks lineup, I think Darvish is also in a really nice spot. And I'm kind of surprised to see him below 9K on this slate.
Let's move over to your top hitter option tonight, obviously. And Gary, and we'll stay with you. There's, there are a bunch. Sandy Alcantara is sitting there as obviously, you really got to pay up, or pardon me, he's right there in the pitching dynamic. There are a lot of Ronald Acuna Jr. obviously is someone, in a great position tonight, but again, similarly, $6,300. Who stands out to you?
You really can't go wrong with a lot of those Braves guys against Patrick Corbin. Corbin's been kind of a gas can all season long, and really going back to like 2020, which is kind of sad for someone with his pedigree. But I think I'm going to just, go the straight and narrow here and take a bat at Coors Field tonight. And Chris Bryant has really, really been on fire since coming off the IL. Obviously, he left for a couple days to go on the paternity list, but his numbers against left-handed pitchers in particular, he's got a 4.02 expected WOBA this season against Southpaws. And you want to take it back even as far as like 2018, if we're talking sample sizes here and large sample sizes. Bryant has a 159 WRC plus against lefties in that span of time, a 989 OPS against Southpaws in that 5-year stretch. This guy hits lefties. And Jose Quintana, while he was amazing the first couple months of the season, has kind of started to taper off the last little bit. And I think he's probably going to have some trouble tonight in the altitude at Coors Field.
What do you say, Paul?
I'm right there with Gary, and one of the 2 guys that I'm looking at is certainly Brian. He's at the top of the wish list for people that follow RotoWire's value meter, and so that's another reason to like him. He's on a hot streak recently, lots of extra base pop in the last couple of weeks, as well as multi-hit games. And then another guy that I like very much tonight is Xander Bogaerts, a must start for me, following up on 5 multi-hit games he's recorded over his last 6 starts. Throw in the fact that he's got an impressive 15 for 31 history against the Yankees starter Jordan Montgomery, and that gives me all kinds of confidence to set aside $4,800 to fit him into my lineup as well tonight.
Well, these are obviously guys that are more popular, more expensive. So when it comes to value, Paul, what direction do you want to go in?
A couple more guys here that I'll mention. I see St. Louis outfielder Tyler O'Neill is a very tempting option at only $3,500. He and his mates face righties. The Pirates pitcher Hunter Green, who's to use Garion's terms, a real gas can. 5.70 ERA, 22 homers and only 85 in a third innings pitch, part of a 134 whip. O'Neill has had a pair of 3-hit games earlier this week and also points to 6 multi-hit games over the last 2 weeks. So I like that hot bat in my lineup. I also like Padres' Hae-Sung Kim for only $3,200, who will enjoy a platoon edge against Madison Bumgarner as part of the potent San Diego offense. He comes into this matchup on a roll too, with 44 multi-hit efforts in his last 10 starts, punctuated by plenty of extra base pop as well.
Garion, where are you saving?
I mean, we're in lockstep again. Ha-Seong Kim is probably my favorite value play on this particular slate. And for a lot of reasons. I mean, he is someone who has absolutely demolished left-handed pitching so far this season. He's still struggled against righties to a somewhat substantial degree, but against lefties, he's got a 160 WRC plus, which is actually better than Manny Machado. It's the best mark of all qualified hitters on the Padres, which is somewhat surprising if, you've watched Manny Machado at all this season. Kim has also been red hot as of late against lefties. He is 8 for his last 16 against southpaws, with 3 doubles and an OBP well above 500. So he's in a really nice spot right now. And I think the nice thing about this matchup with Bumgarner, aside from the fact that Bumgarner is left-handed, is that we've seen a lot of these guys from the KBO come over and struggle with velocity. High velocity. And that is just not something that Madison Bumgarner brings to the table anymore. So I think all of these things in this matchup check the boxes for Kim. And I think he's going to have a really nice night. And he's probably going to hit leadoff for the Padres against the lefty. So anytime you can squeeze a leadoff hitter in for about $3K, that's an opportunity you want to take advantage of.
So from DFS, guys, let's move over to the DraftKings Sportsbook. And obviously, there are a whole bunch of different things that we could look at when it comes to tonight's slate. You, of course, you got the run line, you got game totals, you got whatever it may be that you want to look on, straight money line. But favorite player prop tonight, Garion, we start with you. What is it?
So I'm going to go back to you, Darvish. I mentioned how dominant he's been at Petco Park this season. The Padres are pretty heavy favorites in this game, so it's kind of hard to find an edge. But I think one prop that I really like with Darvish is over 18.5 outs recorded in this game. That is actually at plus money, plus 105. Darvish, sort of counter to the overall trend of baseball, has been working really deep into games consistently. He has actually gone over 6 innings in his last 9 starts, and he's recorded at least 20 outs. So going over this prop in 7 of his last 9 games. So I don't think durability is going to be an issue tonight. And I really don't think the Diamondbacks are going to pose too much of a threat. This is a team that has the 26th best WRC plus in baseball for the season as a whole. Darvish has shut them down twice, the 2 prior times he's seen him this season. And as I mentioned, he's just been absolutely dominant pitching at home. So I think Darvish is going to work deep into this game and go over this number at plus money.
Paul, what's your player prop?
You know what? Garion and I are singing from the same hymnal today. I see big
You guys should
potential.
grab lunch later or something.
I see big potential for an old-fashioned pitcher's duel here, though. That's the part that excites me. Bumgarner against you, Darvish, expecting both veterans to go deep into this game. I like both of them actually to go over their strikeout props, and that's where my focus will be. 4.5 and 6.5 respectively, to pay off at plus 135 and plus 100. So I'm going to be focused on that late game tonight.
All right, slate approved pick then, Paul. Your favorite bet across the DK Sportsbook?
Well, I'm going to go back to the Toronto game tonight against Kansas City. I look for Toronto to come up big after last night's anemic effort. There's almost a lot of other adjectives I could use, but I won't because it's a family show. So I'll take the game parlay of the Jays to win with the game total under 8.5, based largely on Manoah's ability to go long into the game and limit a puny Royals offense that should act like it tonight instead of surprising me. I want to win the plus 130 payout tonight.
Garion, where do you fall?
I'm going to look towards the White Sox Twins game. I know they're on the road, but I was a little surprised to see the White Sox as such heavy underdogs tonight. They are plus 120 on the money line. Look, this pitching matchup on the surface, I guess, is relatively even just from an ERA perspective. Michael Kopech has not been pitching as well the last month or so as he had the prior 2 months, but I don't trust Devin Smeltzer. His advanced statistics are awful. He's got a 5.54 FIP this season. That's almost 2 full runs higher than his ERA. I think regression is around the corner for this guy. And the fact that he is left-handed and a very high contact rate left-handed pitcher at that That's just bad news going up against a White Sox lineup that is always done well against left-handed pitchers. They are once again among the league leaders in both WOBA and WRC plus within the split. I think the White Sox score a lot of runs tonight, and we see a similar game script to what we saw on Thursday night.
All right, guys, we're just getting started here on the Sweat here with you for another roughly 40 minutes. Gary and Thorne, we bid you adieu, but we hope obviously you enjoy the rest of your day and tonight. But Paul Bruno, you're not going anywhere, my friend. You're coming on back for a little NHL free agency talk. Jeff Ulrich will join us on the other side as well. Stay tuned. Here on the Sweat, talking NHL free agency. Paul Bruno, RotoWire, back with us after some great baseball analysis in our first segment. Jeff Ulrich jumps in. Always good to hear from Moose as well. And guys, NHL free agency, we're only a couple days in, obviously, but the initial flurry of moves, none more interesting to me, and I think to many across the hockey world, is that of Johnny Gaudreau leaving Calgary for, of all places, Columbus. Like, that actually happened. He's a Columbus Blue Jacket now, got paid to do so, but he was going to get paid, guys, wherever he went, obviously. Jeff, you were with us yesterday. We didn't get your full take on this. So, what are your thoughts on Gaudreau landing in Ohio?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was such weird news that, it broke our stream yesterday. So, again, like, from a hockey standpoint, it's weird. And I think a lot of people were just like, what, really? Like the Blue Jackets? Why? It's a team that defensively and in net, like, they're not really close. They're definitely going to be an interesting team for fantasy purposes. As I was getting cut off yesterday, that was the one thing I was hitting on. This team was already fun to target and play in NHL DFS. And then you add like one of the most gifted, kind of well-rounded offensive drivers of the puck in the NHL. This top six is going to be fun, man. Like Patrick Laine, assuming he stays there as well. Gaudreau, adding him to the mix, it's going to be good. But man, these teams going to allow a lot of goals too. They're starting guys like Adam Boyquist in their first like top four, on the back end. Like their goaltenders are young and really unproven still. So this team's going to get in a lot of shootouts. I think Gaudreau is a very, very big signing for them. He's a good building block, and I really don't hate the money, but. Like this one came out of left field, and I know Paul has some reasons to think that like there's a good reason why he signed there. But from a hockey standpoint, I really thought the Devils were the team. But it's Columbus, and we'll see if they can do anything with this.
Well, from a hockey standpoint, it doesn't. I guess Columbus already had long odds, very long odds. So it doesn't move the needle that much. Blue Jackets still aren't even in the top half of the NHL when it comes to Stanley Cup favorites on the DraftKings Sportsbook. But Paul, he teed you up. Why? Why was Johnny Gaudreau circling Columbus on his list?
Well, there's a family around Gaudreau, and his wife particularly was central to this decision-making process. It was revealed after his press conference, or during his press conference, that his wife has a career in the medical field and may have found a connection or a job with a large hospital facility in the Columbus area that suits her to a T. And so that was another big reason. I mean, Gaudreau did say that it was circled on his list for a while, but I'm thinking that his wife's career path had a lot to do with that. And, you know, it's kudos to him for recognizing that she has a life too, and a career objective that she wants to follow up on. And it probably will outlast his hockey career. So I think that from that standpoint, it makes a lot more sense to me now. But on the ice, you start thinking about it. And Jeff made an interesting point when he dropped the name of Patrick Laine. That's a guy that should be very excited to see Johnny Gaudreau jumping into a Columbus uniform. And that power play is going to be pretty dynamic with those two guys and Jacob Voracek on the ice. It's going to be trouble for opposition when those three are on the power play.
Obviously, some other movement as well. You know, we talked Wednesday about Giroux heading home to Ottawa. You could look, Andre Burakovsky is going to Seattle 5.5 a year, so a nice payday for him. Vincent Trocheck is headed to New York. So, Paul, if you're looking at this, which team improved the most here early in free agency?
Well, you can make a case that they all did. Burakovsky is a very nice addition, $5.5 million for 5 years. He had 61 points in 81 games played. Seattle needs to find more players like him, though, before they are considered a serious playoff threat. And Vincent Trocheck comes over to Carolina, where he tallied 51 points in 81 games. His highest point total over several years, dating back to a career high back in the 2018 season, where he topped the 70-point mark for the only time in his career. That's the key thing that makes me wonder. I think they paid a little too much, giving him 5.625 over 7 years. I really like the Giroux deal, though, bringing a veteran into Ottawa. He's going to quickly assume a leadership role there, but also serves as a lightning rod for people in the NHL players to take a look and see, hey, maybe Ottawa's getting serious about wanting to compete. He really wants to be there, and the group that's around him looks ready almost to contend for a playoff spot with all the other moves they made this summer. So maybe Ottawa is becoming more of a destination, particularly with Giroux being at the center of the new look.
Jeff, which of these clubs improved the most with their new addition?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from a contract perspective, like the Giroux signing is, Paul's right. I mean, like, this is a team that's got some good young talent up there. And Giroux, I mean, like, they didn't give him, like, it's not like a massive contract. I mean, it's a veteran's contract. I think Giroux has lots of good hockey left. And quite frankly, like, he's the best player of these three we're talking about. The Trocheck signing is going to be really interesting. Trocheck has some skills. And if he's playing on the second line with Artemi Panarin, it could work out very well for New York, but this is also has a big bust factor to it. Trocheck in Carolina really wasn't that good. There's a reason why he's not with Carolina anymore, because he wasn't doing anything. His point total had gone down, his effectiveness. He's a bit of a one-dimensional player, but he's getting to play with a guy like Panarin. That could really just, bump up his upside. So interesting move there. I think the team that improved the most overall is actually the Detroit Red Wings, another team with a really young core. Love the Perron signing. I think they overpaid a little bit for Andrew Kopp, but Andrew Kopp is a guy who, unlike Trocheck, he can just give you a lot of different, he's just got a lot of versatility. He brings high-end penalty killing. He can move up and down the lineup. That's something Trocheck just really hasn't proven. So I like the moves that Detroit made, really almost especially better than the Seattle and New York moves. So Detroit is a team that I think had a very good free agency. I like the move by Ottawa with Giroux as well, though.
So it's, transactions, especially in the case of free agency, there's always two sides to this coin, Jeff. It's, who's helped and who's hurt. And obviously you look at movement in the case of Palat going to New Jersey, $6 million a year, 5 for 30, maybe not a singular piece that, takes the Devils into the playoffs. A guy like Johnny Gaudreau might've made a bigger difference, as Paul alluded to before, but really it's the loss for the Lightning and Palat leaving, the 3-time defending Eastern Conference champions. And of course, a couple cups in there as well. How much are the Bolts going to feel the loss of Palat?
I mean, I think that the Lightning will feel the loss of Palat. I mean, it's like the Lightning can only lose so many core players before it really starts to kind of wear down on them and they get bypassed. And, Palat is just another kind of chink in the armor for them. I know they were able to re-up some guys as well, but, he's proven very pivotal for them in the top 6 in the playoffs. I will say this. I do not like the Devils signing of Palat. I mean, this is a player who, he's kind of shown his upside, and he got a massive contract, massive term. It just feels like an overreaction to not getting Johnny Gaudreau and then overpaying for Palat. So in terms of the moves, that were made. It's one of the I actually dislike the Palat contract the most by the Devils. I just don't think that that's going to be anything that puts them over the top. As far as Tampa Bay goes, I mean, again, I just feel like it's just going to be another thing they're going to have to overcome. They can do it, but it's not like the biggest loss in the world. But again, it's just kind of another chink in the armor. So in terms of the moves I like, I mean, the Oilers, I think re-upping their guys were very key. I mentioned Detroit as just another team that I think made some smart moves. And again, you compare like getting David Perron on 2 years versus Palat for like 6 years. I mean, there's just no comparison. It's so much better to bring in Perron. So really dislike the Palat signing by the Devils, which is unfortunate because it looked like they're going to get Gaudreau. But we'll see if Tampa can rebound again off the loss of another one of their core players.
Well, like I said, the Lightning have controlled the East the last few years, and largely the NHL and a couple of those as well. But Paul, you will not be discouraged to see that your Toronto Maple Leafs obviously are sitting there plus 450 at the top of the Eastern Conference odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So, I guess, are you a believer? Like, should Toronto, should Florida, should these teams have bypassed Tampa Bay based on that loss of Palat or whatever else?
If you cut me, I will bleed blue and white, but it'll be Maple Leafs blue and white. So I'm going to have to try and be as balanced as I can in my comment. But I have to say that, Jeff, you may be surprised to know that Matt Murray actually outplayed Jack Campbell in the second half of last season. And that is where I kind of begin to hang my hat in terms of hoping that he can continue that rebound. He's going to get healthier over the summer, and the Leafs have an excellent medical staff that's going to further that process. This guy's a two-time Stanley Cup champion. And also, I like the contract that Samsonov signed with the Leafs, a $1.8 million cap hit, not going to break their bank. And he signed it on a one-year deal, basically saying, I'm going to prove myself and then bet on myself to have a big year and then hit pay dirt next season at this time. So you got a couple of motivated guys who will battle it out. They're both former number one starters. So I think the tandem is better than any combination the Leafs could have put out that would have involved Jack Campbell last season. That's not to say Campbell's not a great addition for Edmonton. I just don't know how many more games north of 50 you're going to get out of him. And that leaves 32 or so for Jeff to bite on his fingernails, I'm going to suggest.
Paul, Robert Thomas, he's staying in St. Louis for a while. Sergachev, he re-upped in Tampa. Of course, Malkin going back to Pittsburgh. Lettinen in Colorado. So, many of these teams keeping some key core guys, which is obviously good news for them. But which extension have you liked best so far, be it on the team side for the money they gave out or obviously for the player cashing in?
Well, we talked about Palat. That's an example of a veteran player who's getting paid now for the future based on what he's done in the past. I like the contract for Rob Thomas, the youngest of the guys that you mentioned, one of the younger guys who really hit pay dirt on a long-term deal. He's already been a key contributor to a Stanley Cup win and coming off a 77-point season. He's only 23 years old. This 8-year extension takes him to the age 31 season. That's the way to do it in terms of you find a proven talent early. If you want to reward him, give him the big bucks. And he's going to be in your fold for a long while with maybe his best years ahead of him. So that goes counter to the vast majority of other extensions that have been offered for more experienced players based on what they've already done in their careers and maybe are already in decline as they approach their early to mid 30s. So kudos to St. Louis for getting a good bit of business done with Thomas. Moose, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I like the extensions that have been done so far in the NHL rather than a lot of the free agent signings, which isn't like overly shocking. I mean, I think usually the extensions you get guys taking a little bit more discounts. I will say this. I mean, Robert Thomas, I'm still shocked that he got that term. I mean, I know he kind of came on and he's been a pretty good player for them, but like, man, that's like the one extension I really kind of didn't like. I like the Sergachev in Tampa. I think he's a good young player that definitely like they need to keep around, and they don't have that many young core players. He's one of them. I would say again, like, I mean, I'm not going to talk about the Oilers again. We talked about them a lot. I like both their extensions, but I also like what Pittsburgh and Colorado did. I think Colorado, yes, the term they gave Nichushkin was huge, and Lehkonen as well, or Terry Lehkonen, but these are core young players. And they're versatile. And I think that's what Colorado, when you're building around studs like Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and guys on their back end. You need these versatile players who can come through. They've proven to be clutch. I think it was smart not to let Nichushkin and Lehkonen go. So those are the, and then Pittsburgh again, let's go for one more run with Malkin. I mean, what else are you going to find out there? I think that's smart too. I like the extensions that Colorado and Pittsburgh gave. These are teams with a lot more to give still. And, why start blowing it up by not bringing these guys back?
So who's the best free agent remaining, Jeff, and where's the best fit for that person?
I mean, I guess it's got to be Nazem Kadri, right? I mean, in terms of like the fit for Kadri, I mean, I was really thinking that the Rangers would come through and do some fancy dealing, but they obviously, have thrown in their Vincent Trocheck ring, which whatever. I mean, we'll see how that works out. But, Kadri is kind of like, he's running out of places fast. I almost wonder at this point, does he just look at the market and is like, maybe I'll just go back to Colorado and run a one-year deal and try and win another cup. I don't really know where Nazem Kadri is going to end up. It could be a shock place. Maybe he takes like a one-year deal on a contender and someone out of the blue steps up. I think the other one that is interesting is John Klingberg. Klingberg could go anywhere as well. I mean, he may end up going back to the Stars. There's been rumors just because of the market, but I would look for one of these contending teams like, again, maybe like Vegas steps up or something like that, or the Oilers even step up and grab one of these guys, because you've got to look at teams with cap space. And, again, the market seems to be shrinking. So in terms of best available, it's Kadri and I think Klingberg on the back end. I really have no idea where these guys are going to go right now, because it just kind of seems like they're floating in the ether, and the teams that we thought were going to do stuff are kind of done.
Yeah, money's kind of drying up. What do you think there, Paul?
I'm on the same two players, but I'm going to give you destinations that I think make sense for both on longer term deals, or at least something to consider. Nazem Kadri is obviously the best forward remaining. I see a very nice fit for him in Dallas. That's possible. They're looking for another piece to be part of their top six, and he would certainly solidify their center depth. They've kept moving Jamie Benn into the middle of the ice. He hasn't played center throughout much of his career, but he's been forced to play it a lot, and ditto for Joe Pavelski. Now, Kadri is a bona fide center, and he could put those guys back on the wings and get things right in Dallas. They have the cap space to do it. I think John Klingberg is the best remaining D-man. He's been linked on a short-term deal with Ottawa in latest news, but I think a better fit longer term is with the Islanders, who need a power play quarterback desperately. They've put a couple of guys in there with no success at all. This guy's done it all his career, and they have plenty of defensive types around him to insulate the weakest part of his game, which is in his own zone. He'll be a part of the top 30 defense point scoring leaders, and I think that'd be a nice fit in an Islanders jersey.
Guys, the internet told me Jaromir Jagr is still available.
Indeed, and he wants to get a defenseman for his own team too, so it could be a two-part deal.
Let's see, there you go. All right, Paul, thank you very much, my friend. We're going to let you go. Way to contribute to the first half of this show. Jeff, we're going to make you work a little harder. Stick around. Pierce Dietrich will join you as well. We're going to do some NASCAR coming up. The sweat continues after this. We are halfway home on the sweat. We bring back Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich coming in as well. NASCAR time, fellas, right in my neck of the woods too, in New Hampshire, not too far away, coming up this weekend as the NASCAR Cup Series continues. And guys, it's the Ambetter 301 at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Pierce, we're going to start with you because Well, we've heard a lot from Jeff already. Short track after a super speedway. Any worry going from one extreme to the next a week later?
Yeah, it's a completely different event now with a short track after a speedway. Last week, you just randomly pick people in the back. This week, you're going to need guys that lead laps that are up front. New Hampshire was a great race last season, but NASCAR in their infinite wisdom has increased the spoiler on these cars, which then creates more dirty air, which then makes the trailing car struggle to get grip. They can't pass. Long story short, it's going to be very difficult to move through traffic. So you may want to target drivers starting up near the front and probably limit chasing place differential and chasing those cars in the back. You think can score a bunch of points, but they may just get stuck in the back.
Jeff, you agree? Just two totally different weeks in terms of approach here?
That dirty air got me all concerned. I mean, it is obviously a very, very different race though. Like, I mean, a short track speed race versus, you know, the big, obviously the massive track that we were on last week. I mean, I think the positioning is obviously important. It's basically a completely different strategy. Pierce and I were both kind of on the same page for once, just in terms of like, you know, what you should have been doing last week. So yeah, it's a race where I think, again, like the one thing that I've learned about NASCAR this year is you can really start to look at comparable racetracks. And again, like Phoenix sticks out as something, like guys who've had success there. You can kind of bring some of those results potentially to help you look at guys here, but definitely different strategy going into this week.
Moose, Kyle Busch has a few wins there in the Granite State. Who's your favorite option at the top of the board?
Yeah, Kyle Busch looks like setting up as the favorite. No shock there. You know, I mean, you look down and you can definitely make a case for a lot of these guys. I mean, I know that the NASCAR playoffs are approaching fast as well. Ryan Blaney is a guy I think that, like, motivation factor wise should be very high to potentially pick up a win here. So Blaney is a guy I don't mind starting with. I do think that even though like we want to target the top of the board here too, like you can look for some serious value. I mean, you know, Blaney at 10,000, I think is a good starting point, but William Byron is another driver. I mean, like I'm pretty interested in here. I know he hasn't done a ton lately, but seems very focused on this race. You know, at 9,400 too, like going down, I think like a starting point of like Byron and potentially Chris Bell, another driver I like, or Blaney is something you can look at this week. I think that all three of those guys that I mentioned are going to be in the mix this week. And Blaney, especially, like probably the most consistent of the bunch, but Byron and Bell, two guys in the 9K range, I don't mind dipping down to. You could definitely fit in potentially up to 3 studs there above 9K if you start with those guys versus the guys in the high 10s.
What about for you, Pierce?
Yeah, I like all the guys that Jeff just mentioned. Just a little bit more on Blaney. I loved him earlier this week. Jeff talked about comparable tracks that we can look at: Phoenix, Richmond, Martinsville. Gateway is another one. And if you look at those 4 tracks, no one has been better statistically than Ryan Blaney. So I loved him earlier this week. And then I guess I wasn't surprised when DraftKings Sportsbook released their odds. Blaney was the favorite to win the race. But you look here on the DFS side, you get him at a little bit of a discount. He's the favorite to win the race, but Kyle Busch, Logano are all more expensive. Busch doesn't have any wins, really. But when we talk about leading laps, this is a track where he should be good. Talking about those comparable tracks, he ranks 3rd best. Logano is 2nd best. Logano does have the wins. It seems that Team Penske under Blaney and Logano has figured this setup out pretty well. They're running well in the next gen car at these short, flat tracks. So Blaney, Logano, Byron also, all those guys I think are going to be your real threats to lead laps. And you have to get the guys that are going to lead laps. Can't get cute with that. That's going to be expensive drivers. You have to find a place to save somewhere else. We'll talk about that in a second. But Blaney, Busch, Logano, those are my favorites to lead laps. They may not win, but they're going to score points.
Seems like we always talk about Kevin Harvick because, you know, obviously he wins. That's a big part of it. But then there's track history as well. He's won twice recently. So Pierce is he a target in the mid-price guys? Is there somebody you like better? What do you think?
Yeah, Harvick is going to, I would expect him to be popular. He has struggled the last couple seasons, but the place that he hasn't struggled, at least last year, was the short flat tracks. He almost won at New Hampshire last season, scored over 30 points when you look at fast laps and laps led points. This season, he has been good at the short flat tracks. SHR, Stewart-Haas Racing, has also been good here. As you mentioned, he's got several wins at New Hampshire in the past. And you might want to specifically look at that 2019 race. In 2019, NASCAR was the one season where they ran really high spoilers on the cars at the short tracks. creates a bunch of dirty air, makes it very hard to pass. Well, guess who won that 2019 race with the big time spoiler on the back end? It was Kevin Harvick. Also, his crew chief won way back in 2013, Rodney Childers, when he was a nobody. He won with another nobody, Brian Vickers. So Rodney Childers knows his track. Kevin Harvick knows his track. This is definitely the week to put Kevin Harvick back on your radar.
Jeff, is there a favorite in the mid-price guys for you?
I mean, it is pretty hard to make an argument, like for DFS purposes for against Harvick. I mean, he's less than Chris Bell. He's been more consistent. You look at the laps led and the bonus points and stuff like that. And then this, again, like it feels like a fairly good setup for him coming in, obviously on this track. So at 8,800, again, like I think for DFS, yes. I think for betting, like if I was rather to take an outright, I would probably either go down to Reddick or Chris Bell. So I think Reddick is actually the driver I would pivot to off Harvick if you're making projections or whatever, and Harvick's coming in hot. I think Reddick, I mean, he's got the win. He's raced well on these type of tracks, quite frankly. Like he's cheaper, and I think his upside, like I think his winning upside, I think he's a better driver right now from what I've seen this season. So Tyler Reddick is probably the guy I would actually side with there. I think for potential like big fields on DraftKings should get a little bit lower ownership as well. I have no problem maybe using both of them, and I don't think Harvick is a bad DFS play, but I do see Bell or Reddick potentially like just having better chance to actually win the race just with how they've done this year. Again, it's just kind of more of an opinion or a field play, but Harvick's fine at 88. I think that Reddick, though, is a very good pivot off him.
All right. What about value, Jeff? Staying with you.
Yeah. And again, like once you get down below the 8K range, I mean, I really think that like your best play maybe just to like start looking like even just like further down. I mean, there's no one in the 7K range that necessarily jumps out as like a must play. We kind of brushed over Chase Briscoe as well, who's pretty good at 8,400. But once you get below him, I mean, like, Daniel Suarez has been okay, but maybe not his type of track. I would go down and start looking at the guys like Michael McDowell, Brad Keselowski, like under 7K. I really think like that 7K range just looks like a dead range right now. And I kind of like McDowell. I mean, I think McDowell is like a top 10 play here. Makes a lot of sense. He's raced well of late. I mean, he's been very consistent just with the DK points too. And I mean, you look at his history, like it's fine in these type of races. So yeah, you can get a little bit crazy, but I think going with a guy like McDowell is probably my favorite value right now. I don't know. Pierce may have someone lower down, but this is definitely the type of race too, where I don't think you need to get too crazy and go like 2 stars and scrubs either. So
Pierce, who's your value play?
I don't think I would go with McDowell. He's having a great season. He's got a lot of top 10s. He's routinely finishing inside the top 15. But if you look at the one place where McDowell has struggled this season, it's been the short, flat tracks, Phoenix, Richmond, Martinsville, Gateway. Everywhere else he's been not very good, but at these shorter, flatter tracks, he hasn't been quite as hot. I like Justin Haley down at the bottom. The most recent comparable track would be Gateway. He got a solid finish at Gateway. You look at his teammate, a little bit more expensive. People probably aren't going to want to pay for him, and AJ Allmendinger, but AJ Allmendinger finished 10th at Gateway. So the colored cars have been running pretty well. Cole Custer was in the optimal lineup last season at this racetrack. He hasn't been great at these tracks, but it is a discount for a Stewart-Haas racing car at 5,800. He's definitely going to be a possibility that I might consider. If he runs well in practice, then I think he'll start to get a little bit more attention. One strategy that I will suggest is I think a lot of people are going to take cheap guys, maybe hope for place differential. Maybe the winning strategy will be to take a cheaper guy that's starting a little too close to the front, somewhere where you're not really comfortable. You feel like, oh, this guy might slide back. It's not going to work. Typically, people like to chase place differential. Guys that are going to start in the back, move a little bit forward with their value. I think the opposite might be true. You get a guy who you think is starting too close to the front, but at a track where we don't expect a lot of passing, they just run an okay day and they hold on to their position all day long, and they end up scoring more points than the guys that start in the back and stay in the back.
So regardless of price point, then Pierce, who's your favorite DFS play?
Mine's going to be Ryan Blaney. He doesn't have the official win. Well, he did win at Texas, which was an exhibition all-star race, but that has a flat banking to it as well. So I like Blaney. I don't know if he'll win, but if we're looking at guys that are consistently running in the top 5, and that's what we need. If we are chasing fast laps and we're chasing laps led, well, the first thing that you have to do is be up front. And no one has been more consistent this entire season, especially at comparable tracks, than Ryan Blaney. I don't know if he'll win, but if I want the closest guarantee to fast lap points and laps led points, I believe Blaney's going to give me that option.
Jeff, who's your pick?
I'm going to go with William Byron. You go and look at his track history as well. He's got some wins here. 41 laps led last week. Again, I mean, I think his car seems to be running well. I mean, the results haven't been there, but I mean, he seems to be, fine. He's had some really big results earlier in the season as well. I think William Byron is a driver at 9,400. Maybe just go a little bit overlooked, but I'm going to go with him since Pierce took Blaney.
All right. Well, let's just quickly before I let you go, move over to the DraftKings Sportsbook side of things. A favorite bet involving this race here coming up this weekend.
I'm going to go with I'm going to go with the double pack. We'll go with William Byron and Chris Bell. Plus 1,800 on Bell, plus 2,000 on Byron to win. I think those are very fair prices. Bell is a driver who really needs a win coming into the playoffs. So like we said with Chastain as well, like these drivers are kind of under the gun. But then you've got Byron, who he ran pretty well last week. I know he didn't finish well, but I think he at just plus 2,000 looks to be just a little bit underrated. Like you compare him to a guy like Kevin Harvick at plus 1,400. So you could even take top fives on both those drivers. I kind of like the top five on Byron a little bit better, but I'm going to make those two my outright picks. Again, we mentioned Reddick when he won around this price. Why not try and hit another one? We'll go Byron and Bell as two outright picks this week.
What do you have, Pierce?
Let's go to driver props, and we'll stay with the same drivers, but be a little bit safer. And you get a matchup of William Byron versus Alex Bowman. And as Jeff mentioned, William Byron's running really well this season. He looks like a championship contender. You go back to Martinsville, which is a comparable paperclip shaped track, and he won that race. And he's matching up against Alex Bowman, and Alex Bowman has just struggled this season. He has not looked good. He's barely finishing in the top 15. It's not the best return, but you take Byron over Bowman. I think that's an easy win. And then we also talked about Harvick and Reddick earlier. Reddick's having a great season, but I think this race just stacks up really well for Harvick. Harvick has just run really well at these short flat tracks. He's always been good at this racetrack. He seems confident. His crew chief seems confident. I like Harvick to beat Reddick in that matchup. I think both those are some pretty safe bets.
All right, Pierce, enjoy following the track this weekend. I know you're going to be glued to it as you always are. And Jeff, you're just bouncing around, man. Hockey and obviously NASCAR. Why not talk a little golf with you before you go as well? So we're going to come back on this.
People call this the dead season, but I mean, we got NASCAR, we got golf odds. Like, I mean, we can just bet forever here. So
nothing's dead for you, man. You are always busy. So we're going to talk to Jeff some more coming up and find out who the latest leader is in the British Open, which, yes, is going on right now. In fact, round two, midway or even closing out pretty soon. It's the beauty of the time difference. We'll come back in a sec. We are back to discuss a golf tournament of many names, the Open Championship, the Open, the British Open, whatever you feel good with. Jeff Ulrich, I feel good about him being here. It's just going to be the two of us here for the next little bit, talking golf. Jeff, I want to ask you your reaction to round one. Thing is, we're so deep into round two. Some guys are already in the clubhouse at this point. At the moment, it's the Cams atop the leaderboard. Rory McIlroy has fallen off. He's still, in contention, but he's sitting at last look. Rory is through 5. He's 4 shots back. Cam Smith, 11 under. You got Cam Young at 10 under. Both these guys are still on the course, and a whole bunch of guys right behind them are already done for the day. So what do you think of where we're at so far?
Yeah. So again, like with most Open championships or the Opens, there's a bit of a wave thing developing here. I mean, right now it looks like the guys who started early yesterday and then are going out in the afternoon today, they're just getting easier conditions. The afternoon guys kind of got the tougher wave of it. It looks like the afternoon wave today, you're still seeing low scores. Cam Smith 6 under through 12 holes. And look, Rory's 4 back, but he's also only on his 6th hole. Like Cam Smith obviously blitzed kind of the front 9. So there's a lot of birdies out there for Rory to potentially make this up. We'll see if the wind really does get up this afternoon. But like right now, the low scores are out there for the afternoon guys. So can some of these guys capitalize on it? I don't know. We did see a lot of movement this morning. Again, like the easier waves have been in the morning so far. We had Dustin at 5 under. Tyrrell Hatton went 6 under. Adam Scott, my guy who started 4 over par, and through 6 holes yesterday, went 7 under today. Now he's in the tournament at T6. Cantlay went 5 under. So a lot of movement in the morning, but these afternoon guys, if they can just extend it a little bit, they're going to have an advantage. And right now, Cam Smith, Rory, Cam Young, they can still take like the I don't know what you call it, the control of this tournament. If they can, get into like 4 or 5 under par for the rounds today. Cam Smith's at 6 under. So
Scott, as you noted, from even yesterday through, to 7 under. I mean, it's a heck of a turnaround.
He was 4 over through his first 6 holes. I mean, like he was. I thought he was out of the tournament, and now he's at T6. So it's a very big turnaround for Adam Scott. But
sure.
He's put himself. He's got to hope that Cameron Smith doesn't get past 12 under or something.
So to your point, going back to what you were talking about originally, when it comes to, this wave that's on the course right now and live betting, is there anything that we could be taking advantage of?
Yeah. So, I mean, the live betting for this Open, I think one thing that is going to ring true, there's low scores available. Now, we're going to see the wind pick up a little bit on the weekend, which is really interesting. So I don't think you'll necessarily see like a ton of lower scores Saturday, but if you can get guys out just a little bit early and, they're within 6 or 7, I mean, I think there's going to be some potential there. Like, let's see where guys like, Patrick Cantlay and Adam Scott end up at the end of this round. I don't think now is necessarily the time to get on Scott and Cantlay if you're already on them. Let's see where Cameron Smith ends. If he ends at like 14 and Cantlay and Scott are 7 back, then let's see what their odds are, because their odds are probably going to get up to a point where they're like plus 3,000 again, plus 5,000, and you can jump on them. But I don't necessarily think now is the time, because I think there's still some birdies left out on the course for these guys. If you are targeting players still left out on the course, I mean, you could go down, but a lot of these players, like Xander Schauffele, is probably the one name that really sticks out. He's only on his 5th hole. He's at 5 under. You can still get Schauffele at plus 1,600. If there's birdies left out there, there's a chance he could just get hot on the back 9 and, he could get in at 10 under, and then he's like 3 or 4 back, or maybe even not, right? So Schauffele is probably the one contender where you look at, he's got a ton of holes left and you could jump on. But my opinion right now is you wait for this wave to finish, because tomorrow is where the chaos could start. And you could get one of these leaders throw in like a 75 or something, and then the pack comes back, right? So I think that the guys in the clubhouse right now, you got to wait on. If you're targeting anyone on the course, it's probably Schauffele, because he's got a ton of holes left, and we know he can get hot real quick.
Looking at some of these guys in their round 2 scores, whether on the course still or in the clubhouse. Mentioned Cam Smith, obviously at the top of the leaderboard, 6 under through 12 specifically today. Dustin Johnson had a 5 under round. You could look at Hatton, who you mentioned at -6. Scott, the 7 under. Cantlay, 5 under. Matt Fitzpatrick, bounce back day, goes 6 under. Aaron Wise even at 5 under. Really what I'm boiling down to here in reciting some of these is how much of this is, the wave, when they started, obviously, and what the conditions were versus, morning versus afternoon, versus guys that you just truly believe in and, hey, hot day, and they're going to ride this into the weekend.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, like a lot of the guys that I like pre-event are up there. I mean, Cameron Smith is a guy who's on. I think that what worries me about Smith, and this is a little bit applies to Young, but maybe more Cameron Smith, the conditions, if they get tougher tomorrow, we have seen Cameron Smith's issue is just putting in that one bad round lately, like putting in like the 75. So Smith is a guy I obviously believe in, but if the conditions are getting hairy tomorrow, I would rather start looking at guys further back. Again, like you look at guys like Adam Scott. I really think Adam Scott is in a position here where, if things get tough tomorrow, he's been pretty consistent throughout his entire game. He's a veteran player who can certainly handle the wind a little bit. I don't mind thinking about him. Again, like I think tougher conditions may also help a guy like Dustin Johnson. So like, let's see where Dustin Johnson is at the end of this round as well. He's at plus 850 right now, but he could easily drop back a little bit if Rory goes a little bit lower. So I think you've got to take in the conditions into account. This is not the time to get on Smith with the conditions potentially hardening up tomorrow. As much as I like him, if he can just hang around tomorrow, I think Smith will be there. But again, this is really like when you're looking at the top of the board, we're going to factor in those tougher conditions tomorrow. I think you got to start looking at guys like Scott, Dustin Johnson, and, potentially even like a guy like Matthew Fitzpatrick, I think will benefit a lot if the conditions get tougher. Fitzpatrick is great. And as we saw at the US Open, he's got that short game that's going to be able to help him. He's way more consistent off the tee than Cam Smith. So Fitzpatrick, another dude for tomorrow, who I think started slow, but this is a good time to potentially think about getting on him.
Another tough day for Tiger Woods. Not as tough as round one, but, he does go 3 over, finishes 9 over. He's obviously going to miss the cut. So he talked about it after, in all likelihood, bidding farewell to St. Andrews and it being his last Open championship, or the Open, again, however we want to term this thing. I know neither one of us is surprised, obviously, that it was not a good tournament for Tiger, but are you surprised that it was this bad?
No, not really. I mean, like, again, like Tiger's big accomplishment over the last couple months has been playing like one practice round. I mean, he just hasn't played anything. Like, this is a player who had to drop out of the PGA, couldn't play the US Open. I'm not sure why we would have had any expectations for him. Like, him just being able to play was like the big story this week, which is sad, but that's just where he is in his recovery. I think that the Augusta thing just set our expectations a little bit too high. We thought he'd progress. Obviously he didn't, maybe even came back a little bit too early, but as far as Tiger not playing St. Andrews again, though, I don't know about that. I think you will see him back here the next time we see St. Andrews in whatever. I think it's 5 years. He's just got to get healthy. And I think that time will heal that. So I'm pretty bullish on the fact you'll probably see Tiger play St. Andrews once more. I know what he said, but I think that Tiger needs time, and we just didn't give enough time off after the recovery. I think hopefully we'll see, a few more better efforts from Tiger at the majors next year, but honestly, if you're asking me like this week, I'm really not that shocked about it. There just was nothing to go off that this was going to be some kind of miraculous recovery because, we saw what he did at Augusta and it just, it didn't transpire into anything positive. So
one more for you before we go. Projected cut line right now is even par. Any actual surprises for you in terms of guys that aren't going to make the weekend?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely lots of surprises. I mean, I think right now, I think the biggest two is probably Max Homa and Will Zalatoris. Zalatoris, a guy, a lot of people, a lot of DFS players were high on, obviously contending at the first two majors. This is just such a different setup, slower greens, a little bit easier track. He just never really got the read of the greens. And quite frankly, just not really that great a putter. He's a good fast greens putter, which I think we need to notice with Will Zalatoris. Take him on these tougher courses with really fast greens, but not necessarily at the Open where it's lower scoring, slower greens. Max Homa is a guy, I think he just got overwhelmed by the moment playing with Tiger Woods the first 2 rounds. You could go down though, like guys like Tony Finau kind of blowing up this week. A couple other names like, Phil Mickelson's no surprise, but guys like Hao Tong Lee, like playing well. Mito Pereira, these are good young players. They just came in. They just didn't get it going. St. Andrews, a little bit of a tricky course, tricky greens, just never got it going. But I think there's still potential. One thing I would be looking at too, the top 10 odds on guys like Matthew Fitzpatrick, plus 115, still the top 10 on the DK Sportsbook. If it gets tough conditions, I think those are going to look pretty good there on Fitzpatrick. That'll be my one other weekend bet I'll throw out there before we get off.
All right. Well, it is time for us to go. It's been a fun hour, though. We want to thank everyone who was part of the show. Jeff, here, part of 3/4 of the show. And of course, everybody else that chipped in as well, including Gary and Thorne, who's going to be with you on the slate a little bit later on today after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim. So right around 5:15 Eastern time with Matt LaMarca. I believe Brendan Glasheen as well for that show to close out the slate here for the week. The Sweat continues on Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you join us. I'll have you again on Monday with many of the same people you heard from here during this show. Want to thank our behind the scenes crew, Drew and Daniel and Howie. Appreciate all them. Appreciate all you guys for watching as well. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you later.
We're clear. Thank you.
Excellent job. Thank you very much, all.
We made it.